Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. We are live on Facebook. Slightly different one today. What we're doing is discussing about events in and around the UK, the EU and Asia. We already know that in the US, they get a lot of love. There's lots of great events. We speak about them often on the show, like SellerCon and stuff. But I think it's time to celebrate a lot of the events that's taking place outside of the US, because there's a lot of scope there. And we've seen the development of the FBA community grow in all these different places. So I'm going to go around the room and start with getting people to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the chat. So can we start with Emily?
So hi guys, my name is Emily. I'm a community marketer from a company called Limworks, and we host loads of events such as the Limworks Growth Meetups and our annual event, Lynn Academy.
Excellent. And going along, Augustus? Augustus, can you hear us? I think he's frozen. We'll come back to Augustus. Let's go to Megla.
Hi, so I'm Megla Bhardwaj, and I organized two events. One is the Global Sources Summit, which is an e-commerce conference in Hong Kong, and also a sourcing trip in India called India Sourcing Trip.
Excellent. And Augustus, you there?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
back. So sorry for the internet connection. My name is Augustus Kligis. I'm originally from Eastern Europe, from Lithuania. And recently this year, I started to organize different events in Europe. Did one in European Seller Conference in Prague. Did one in Israel, which is not directly in Europe. And this year, I'm doing in September one more event in Lithuania and another event for Amazon advertising experts in October in Amsterdam.
Sounds good. Prabhat.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Prabhat, and I've been working with Amazon Meetups for, God knows, is it past 7-8 years, perhaps? Recently, this year, we've started trialing AmoFest UK, the full-day conference, and seems to be a lot of interest on that.
Excellent. That's good. Michael, if you just unmute.
Hi, I'm Mike Michelini, host of the Global from Asia podcast, and I've had the pleasure to have Danny speak at one of our events. We do the Cross-Border Summit every year in Guangzhou, China.
Excellent. And Dan, do you want to do an intro?
Yep. Hi guys, my name is Dan Ashburn. I'm the co-founder of Seller Events, which hosts community meetups and networking events all over the world, and also co-organizer of the China Magic Trip, which is a sourcing and 12-day mastermind trip in China.
Sounds good. All right, so let's just get things under the way. I'm just going to quickly run through all the events that's taking place between now and September, and then we're going to go around to each group and we can talk about the history of these events as well. So September 7th, I've got Evelyn Demirov coming over for the Orange Hack Mastermind. All this stuff is information's in the notes below. And then we'll be over with Augustus in Lithuania on the 12th to 14th of September. Then 1st of October is off to Birmingham with Emily at the Lynn Academy. And then returning to event for Augustus in Amsterdam on the 3rd and 4th of October, which is the PPC Congress. And then it's going to be AmoFest in Manchester on October 17th, followed by the Cross-Border Summit on the 22nd to the 23rd. And in and around that time will also be China Magic event going along that week as well. And then it will be Global Sources with Megla on the 27th and 29th. And also Megla's got a sourcing trip, which goes in between those dates, if you're in Asia, of the 14th to the 20th. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this up in date order. So coming back to Augustus, little backstory here. We've known each other for about 3 years, maybe a bit longer. He's known as the Summits guy, or he was. And then he's decided it'd be a really good idea to attend just one conference in Germany, and thought, I know what I do. I'm going to start doing conferences. And now he's got the bug for it, and he does them all over Europe. So he's done Prague, Lithuania. Step in here for me, Augustus.
Well, yeah, so yeah, basically it's kind of a joke, because in the last 3 years ago, I started to do something in this industry with events, and it was virtual events. And in 2.5 years, I did 6 virtual events for Amazon sellers. And now within 12 months, I will probably accomplish 6 live events. And I'm really happy to bring, I traveled a lot in my life, more than 6 countries I have visited. And I like, for me, borders doesn't exist. So that's why I don't care where I'm doing event. Of course, there are some bureaucratical, maybe obstacles I have to go through, like VAT registrations in the countries you want to do events in Europe, which is like the biggest pain. But yeah, I'm really happy to bring international events in different countries around the world. So my event in September, which is in my home country, Lithuania, supposed to be a one-day little event with few international speakers, Danny included, but it will end up 2-day festival with probably 15 international speakers. So
sounds good. Cool. So that's Lithuania, 12th to the 14th. We'll come back to you in a bit, Augustus. And then you've got Birmingham, October 1st. So Emily, I done, how many years have you been running? I mean, last year, I mean, you have a big focus on lady bosses as the keynotes, don't you, as well? So do you want to explain about who was there from a Dragon Den member was last year? And we've got Karen this year. Is that right? Do you want to turn on your mic for me, or I can unmute?
Yeah, sure. There we go. So yeah, Lynn Academy, wow. I mean, I haven't actually been around to see all of the Lynn Academies, but from what I know, Lynn Academy started off in a pub with just a few of our prime customers and just talking about the actual product. But now we've grown, it started 8 years ago, and now we've grown into a huge, e-commerce focused event for everyone that sells online. You could sell anything online, and you would definitely benefit from Lynn Academy. We've got over 1,000 online sellers attending now, that started off from just say 20, 8 years ago. So we've come a really long way, and personally I'm really proud to say that. So yeah, we had Deborah Meaden last year. She was absolutely amazing. We did a one-to-one Q&A with her where everyone could sit in and ask her questions. And now we've got the star of The Apprentice, Karen Brady, and she will be also doing teaching you what it means to be a fantastic leader within this industry. So yeah, we've got a great agenda this year. We cover all sorts of topics, and most of our attendees sell on Amazon. So we've got some really cool Amazon focused topics. We've got the Seller Session live panel. Before we did focus on Amazon, but it was more, much more on a sort of niche scale, typical things like just expanding and taking advantage of the platform as a whole. But now we're really delving in deep with some in-depth advice, and that's all come from sort of market research. So actually asking our previous attendees, what do you want to see? And Amazon was a huge focus in that. So we've got some workshops on how to use a 3PL, FBA, FBM shipping on Amazon, and also a Seller Sessions panel, which you will be doing, Danny. And so yeah, we've come a really long way, and the focuses have really shifted, as well as us scaling up. So yeah, looking forward to it.
So I mean, so basically quite a lot of the stuff that you originally did, because the software is multi-channel, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And obviously Amazon's grown, and you've embraced that as well.
Absolutely.
What's interesting as well, I think, is it almost doubled? You're down by the NEC. I can't remember the exact venue, but it's near the NEC, isn't it? But
the Vox, last year. But then this year we're moving to the ICC, which is a much bigger venue. So last year we had a capacity, I think, of about 700 people, but now we've increased to 1,200, which includes 1,000 guests. So yeah, definitely scaled up.
Sounds good. And then a couple of days after that, we're over in Amsterdam. Augustus, do you want to give us a little bit of feedback on? It's the first PPC Congress that you're doing. It's an approach for 3 different areas of the market, i.e. being consultants and agencies, software, and obviously the end user. You've called it the triangle, but it's the first of its kind, isn't it? I don't think there's been any other Amazon-based PPC conferences.
Yeah, I'm not aware of such. Maybe there were some workshops of 2 hours, but the idea was coming to talk to one of the PPC consultants in the Amazon industry, and he said that PPC experts are exchanging information all the time, and I thought, why not to bring them all together? And at the end, of course, I have to bring PPC softwares and end users, Amazon sellers who maybe want to outsource their advertising management, or maybe they also want to learn PPC strategies if they are managing advertising themselves. So let's see how this event will be received and how many people will come, but I hope it's a very interesting idea, and it will make a lot of, especially PPC agencies, to come from the caves, from the corners, because it will be event just for them for 2 days, which have never happened in the industry.
Yeah, it's going to be a geek fest, let's be honest. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of data flying about. My only concern is got to keep everyone out the coffee shops in the daytime. But other than that, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's move over to Prabhat. Now, Prabhat is an OG. He was around before most of us in the UK. When I started to do like meetup events back in May 2015, it was an event set up called the Amazon Seller, I think it was called. It started by a guy called Anthony Vaughan. And when he moved to the US and I joined, and we're hosting the UK with Richard as well. But prior to all that, Prabhat has been flying the flag. So do you want to just give a little background back then, that what we called the gold rush period?
Yeah, so I think the meetups I say, if I remember right, it was 2014. And the idea was to meet up other Amazon sellers, because at that time I was working full time for another company, doing all the bits like product listing optimizers and managing, even picking, packing the orders. So as we all know, with when you work online, it's a lonely area in some ways, because you go there, you do the work, and that's it. You talk to very less people.
Yeah.
And if you've got to ask something, either you read the blogs and forums, but there's nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
And I just started putting some events out locally, and that was in Wales.
Mm-hmm.
And we had few sellers who came in, and we had a little bit of chat, and trying to find what their problem was and trying to help each other out. And that's how it started. And I wouldn't say we've grown too much given the years we've worked with, but it's been throughout the UK. So at some point, I was doing an event from Newcastle to down in Manchester to Brighton, so to say.
Yeah.
Then there is lots of meetups now. There's lots of people doing it. It's good to see that progress.
Yeah.
It's good to see Linworks doing the meetups as well. So it does show that there is an importance that meetups bring in, and there is a significant impact to a brand and also to the sellers who we help. Yeah. And given that, I thought, let's try and do one event a year. Let's do a conference. Let's try it out, see what happens, which means perhaps less work and focus on one place and one event. So this is what I trialed, and you were with us in May, and we had a good interest. The feedback was good.
Yeah.
And it's not, I wouldn't say it's because of one person. It was a collective effort from all the speakers, all the organizers, and I was there for 5 minutes, and the rest of the event ran on its own with all the speakers. So I'm grateful for all the speakers to get involved in there. And the October one, it's going to be the similar. So we'll put out lots of practical information out. All the speakers are knowledgeable in their field.
Yeah.
And they will bring everyone a practical experience on what they've done, what they experimented. And and then have a chat with speakers. If you want to, everybody's there to help each other out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of this, is that I'm in communication with a lot of guys, like all on the call. We've got good relationships, even down to us too. It's like I had seller sessions live a week after your event in London, but both of us had sold out. So there was a good demand there, and you need to add that spread. Like I said, in the US, there's events going on all the time, and I think that's starting to grow now. I mean, there's people that should get honorable mentions that are not on the call, that are in places like Germany, like Gil Lang, who's done a lot of work over there, and there's Alex Uderton and the events that he's putting on, and there's Tamer, what he's putting on. There's so much good stuff that's taking place at the moment. But you're back again in October, that's right? Yeah.
That's right, October the 17th, yes.
Okay, cool. Right, so with that in mind, let's move over. Let's just pull up my notes here again. to the next stop is Cross Border Summit. So Michael, 22nd to 23rd, Guangzhou in China. Talk to me.
Yeah, sure. So this will be our fourth annual. So
Yeah.
we started it in 2016, April, in Shenzhen, but we're moving it closer to the Canton Fair and the trade shows based on feedback from a lot of our attendees. I think our trend is we're getting smaller. Actually, we want to have less people. We're just targeting maybe 150 max, but more like 100 people. We like to be cross-border because we try to bring Chinese sellers. You're hosting a panel also about with some of our sellers based in Asia and China. We have people from Taiwan, Singapore, and mainland China coming over to share how they operate their businesses. But this will be our fourth one, 3 in Shenzhen, 2 days, and then we also will have some interactive things with the fairs and with some workshops. But it's really, we're focusing on quality. We don't have anybody Chinese people here, but there's tons of events in China in Chinese for Chinese sellers.
Yeah.
We try to bring some of those sellers there, but we do an English only conference in mainland China.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes us unique. So we try our best to accommodate the Chinese community, but of course a lot of our attendees are coming for the trade show season, and they're more established sellers, able to come out for the shows. So it's always a great time. We've had you there in the past, and having you back. So it's all about, I think everybody here that organizes an event, it's always about the relationships. A lot of stuff you can learn, maybe on your podcast or other podcasts, but coming to a live event, it just really makes amazing business relationships. So I think any event here is also would say it's about the community that's being built and the people that are being met, especially here in Asia, especially as foreigners or expats in Asia. It's still a bit fragmented, and with all the events in Chinese in China, we're trying to be more of an international event inside of mainland China with the community.
Sounds good. Excellent. We'll come back to you again in a moment. Dan, I know you've got to jump the call soon.
Yeah,
Talk
no
to me
worries.
about China Magic. I mean, I know you and Fina for a while now. We work together in collaboration on different things. You guys were helping out with Seller Sessions Live. You were on the panel. Fina was co-host, etc. So we do work together. This is going to be my first China Magic where I'll be doing some mentoring work. But do you want to give the audience a bit of background on what China Magic's about and its origins, and obviously talk about Fina, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So China Magic, this is China Magic 6. It's twice a year when the Canton Fair happens, April and October. Athena started China Magic 3 years ago after going on a sourcing trip to China and seeing that it didn't really have everything it needed to support and help an Amazon seller expand and grow their business. So China Magic is a 12-day sourcing trip. We visit phase 2 of Canton Fair for the first few days. We then hop over to Hong Kong and visit Megla, her amazing conference at Global Sources, and our attendees love that every time. And then we come back to Canton to phase 3. So we're in China for 12 days, and every single night we meet for 3 hours a night to go through 3 hours of training on Amazon. Now, we cover the entire business. The agenda is actually going to be published on the website this week. We cover the entire business, everything from product selection to sourcing to launching to getting reviews, running PPC. It really is like an Amazon MBA. In a 12-day intensive program. And then after the training every night, we break for an hour, and one of the mentors takes a group of people and we mastermind for an hour. So that's happening every night. And because it's 12 days, the beautiful thing I love about it is the relationships that are formed and the trust and everything that's formed is unlike anywhere else, because just the level of intensity, you're with these people for like 18 hours a day. Yeah. So on the trip, each time we have different mentors come in. This time you've got myself and Lydon and Kian. So Kian Golzari, expert product development sourcing, sourced over 2,500 products, sources for like the NFL and NBA and all these people in America. But then we've got some really big hitters as well, like Moshe, who's doing sort of 40 million plus a year. We've got Jamie Davidson doing 100 million a year on Amazon. So all these mentors come in, they give up 12 days of their time, and we just go deep into the business. So that's China Magic twice a year, Canton Fair. We take 100 people we were hitting 50 and then we kept getting a waiting list. So we pulled the trigger very nervously in April this year.
It's not cheap to put on them events either, is it?
No.
Like hotel bills and stuff. I know. I've seen the zeros on the invoices. So,
but no, it's good. It's growing from strength to strength. We love going to global sources in Hong Kong with Megla. And yeah, ChinaMagicTrip.com.
Sounds good. Megla, last but not least, of course, it's just that your dates fell towards the end of the schedule. So I've got very fond memories. It was my first international speaking gig was at Global Sources. Peter was graceful enough to put us on back then. And I think that's put me on the road to a lot of the speaking work today. You know, it was very nerve-wracking, and I think it was your very first event anyway. But I've seen now you guys have grown. The room's got larger, the lineups have got stronger as well. Do you see what I mean in terms of depth and strength and stuff? So do you want to give a little bit of a history lesson?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, we started Global Sources Summit in 2016. So the first one was April 2016. And since then, we've held a conference twice a year, every April and October. So this is going to be the 8th time we host this conference. And it's co-located with Global Sources trade shows. So the idea is e-commerce sellers who are visiting China and Hong Kong to source products, they can attend the conference, learn all about sourcing and selling online. And at the same time, they can meet with suppliers at the exhibition. So that's, one of the USPs of the event. And then we have about 20 speakers who are coming to speak this time, including, of course, yourself. And then we've got other speakers, just Jim Cockram, CJ Rosenbaum. Dan was a speaker as well. Athena is speaking, Kian Golzari. And most of the attendees are actually from the US and Europe. So these are Amazon sellers who are coming over to Asia to source for products or attend the Canton Fair. And they're more established sellers as well, because typically when sellers are new, they don't really go to go over to Asia to attend trade shows as well. So they're more established sellers, and the focus is a bit more on Amazon, but we also cover topics related to building your own e-commerce website or selling on eBay, and Shopify and stuff like that. Yeah.
Sounds good. And you've also got this is quite a new one for you. This is your first one, the trip to India as well, isn't it? To give a bit of diversification in terms of where to source products from.
Absolutely. So India sourcing trip, this is my own initiative. And this is like a very unique sourcing trip because nobody's doing sourcing trips to India. And the reason I started this trip was because I've worked in India personally in the sourcing industry, and I know the kinds of products that are produced there. And I think that there are so many opportunities for e-commerce sellers to private label products from India. And, no one's really doing that. So when the tariffs were, announced on Chinese made products, that's the time when there was interest in sourcing from alternative markets. And, one of the markets was India. And, then e-commerce sellers started asking me like, hey, can you source from India? You're Indian. Do you know any suppliers? So that's how the idea was born. And so I'm expecting about 30 sellers on this first trip, and it is a 7 days and 6 nights trip, and we're going to be attending this export focused trade show in Delhi, which is called the Indian Handicrafts and Gifts Fair. There are about 3,000 exhibitors at the show. And apart from attending the show, we're also going to be hosting a one-day conference where I've invited a lot of experts who focus on or who specialize in sourcing from India. And so there are going to be presentations about various aspects related to, how to select suppliers, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to manage quality controls, all the various aspects related to sourcing. So I've got about 10 coaches overall. There are some India sourcing experts from India. There's some coaches from the US, so Tim Jordan and CJ Rosenbaum. And then I've also got some coaches from Australia who are coming over for the trip. Sounds
good. Cool. So we kind of covered all what's going on in the events. Let's get into a bit of a Q&A here. Now, we know ourselves, and I've done it over the years in former industries, been a DJ, I've put on events, etc. But there was nothing quite as much terrifying as putting on seller sessions live, because there's a lot riding on it after the length of the podcast and everything else. To add an empty event would be a killer. So basically I decided it was a really good idea to spend 7 months bringing over all the heavy hitters just so that I can break even on an event. But it just terrified me for 7 months. I didn't know. I mean, we sold out 2 days before. The irony is, I think it's a show and tell. We've now done a third of the tickets for next year. So 33% of the tickets have already sold, and we're still a year to go. Who wants to tell me some terrifying stories about when they started out on the road and how tough it is to actually put events on?
Well, I can just share, it was my Prague event in March 2019 was my second event I ever attended, the first one I organized. And I worked on it for 9 months. The idea actually came up 2 years before that. And then for 9 months, when I found the venue, I had to work and plan. At the beginning, it looked like it's easy. And then later, what made me mad is all these micro tasks, like 200 micro tasks you have to have in the head.
Yeah.
And this drives me crazy. But after the first event, I felt like it's easy to make an event. And maybe that's why I end up like making other events.
Yeah.
It's really easy. And that's why for Amsterdam event, I'm having an event manager. Prague event will be easy for me to repeat because like in your case for Seller Sessions Live, for me in Prague, also like 60% of things are done. I don't need to search for service providers. So yeah, basically it's maybe a question to hiring event managers. So you don't need to worry about these micro tasks, but for me, it feels it's easy.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the first one's terrifying. And as I put the second event together in less than 48 hours, because like you said, you've got all your service providers, you've got to book your talent who's going to be speaking, but you've got your event right, you've got everything set up, but it's that chicken and egg thing, isn't it? You don't know who's going to buy tickets. And sometimes either tickets sell like very slowly on a daily basis, or they're like, there's a boom and bust. You have a load at the beginning on early birds and then they sell out at the end. So it is a tough one. Emily, you guys started in the pub and now you're like filling out 2,000 capacity venues. So
yeah, so I definitely, for me, I would say it's because when you start out in an event, you don't have a structure. You're starting literally from scratch. So for me, it was just obviously coming in a bit later. It was looking at all of the data from sort of the previous 6 years and looking at it from a perspective of, okay, where are the patterns? Where are the drop-offs? Where are the quiet periods? Where, and like you said, August, the micro tasks are particularly difficult to manage, which is why you need a team. Whereas before, even last year, it was my community manager, Gabrielle, who organised last year's. So she had the marketing side and the logistics side, whereas this time there's 3 of us. So it definitely makes things easier. But from my perspective, it's looking at the patterns, which was particularly scary because, again, there was a lot riding on the particular campaigns that we put out there, because I was like, is this going to work? Because I'm just basing it on previous data. But I think once you've got that structure in place and you know what works, it makes it so much easier for the next year and the year after that.
Sounds good. Michael, do you want to tell them the story when I spoke at the Cross Border Summit, April 17th, I think it was, where you literally filled it out very last moment, didn't you? Last few days.
I don't know if it's China or Asia or me or us, but yeah, I think I don't know if the other event organizers agree with me, but for me, everybody knows you're building awareness. People listen to this podcast, they're thinking, at least in my network, people don't want to commit until the last minute, especially our first one. It started also because of similar people came for the trade shows. People were always contacting me, listening to the podcast, wanting to meet. So I figured to put them all together. But yeah, it's extremely stressful. People just don't want to commit a lot. I don't know if it's the culture, but they'll say they're coming, but they won't actually, confirm, even with early bird, even with, bonuses, we tried to do like early sign up bonus or special webinar calls, but I've come to accept that people don't want to, I don't know if it's the culture or the community here for me, but
knowing that is helpful for planning in the future as well, because but the good thing was as well is like leading up to the event, if I'm right, I think it held 200. And you sold the last 150 tickets or so in the last 3 days, but people paid at the higher price. So where they're coming in last minute, instead of buying the early birds, they paid 2 or 3 times higher for the ticket price, because it's like
there was like one couple, they came like the day of the event, and like even you're saying like you can't come, and they're just like cash in hand, like money doesn't matter. But you know, you try to tell them like a month ahead,
Yeah.
2 months ahead. At least in my experience, I don't know. It's because we have people coming from different parts of Asia. You know, like they'll fly in from Taiwan or Shanghai, or the couple is from the Philippines, so they couldn't even find a place. You know, they were late. They didn't care. Like it was crazy. But
that's part of like early, like you're in where you are is still developing. Do you see what I mean? Like these kind of events. I'm sure Prabhat had the same thing in the early days as well. Now he's more established. You've built up a list. So when you go on sale with the tickets now for your event, you've established a brand in the UK. You know it's coming twice a year. So ultimately, there's a big uplift. But the point of this conversation is that I want people to know out there how tough it is to put on good events. And they're like, people who may look on the outside thinking these as massive money spinners. That's not always the case. It is in some cases for some people, but there's a huge amount of work that involved. And there's a fine line between getting it right and not getting it right. So, but yeah, Prabhat, one of your little stories, please.
Yeah, so I still don't find it easy. I know Augustus said it's easier for him now, but I still struggle actually to put an event out. For me, the challenge has been to put the right amount of talks and the speakers. Mm-hmm. And what I find is if we don't engage with attendees through a good amount of speakers and changing all the time, people don't seem to attend again.
Yeah.
And what I've found out with every event like in the last few years, I don't seem to get repeat a lot of them.
Right.
Perhaps something wrong with what I do. So
no, there isn't. I tell you what that is. That's churn rate. What you have is that you get an array of Amazon sellers, like new guys come, test the water and go. I used to see it with our meetup events ourselves. We'd say 54% would churn. That we have the regulars that we still see today at these different meetup events in London, the same crowd.
Yeah.
But there is like, we worked out to be 54%. There is a churn rate that will come through source of product, leave. And Amazon is a bit like that. We do know that it gets tougher year on year in terms of what it does. But all that means is the cream rises to the top and we've got proper people running proper businesses. It's not a fly by night culture that it's been sold to by some marketers. So what you're doing isn't wrong. That is like, for me, that's standard. I've seen that across the board and I've seen that for a number of years.
Right. It's good to know. You know. So what I tried this time again to mix up Amazon Seller Central and Vendor Central both. So it is an Amazon focused conference, but slightly different twist to other events is why not talk about vendors as well? Because the volume of sales vendors are raising, it's a lot higher than Seller Central sales. So again, what we're trying to do is panel discussions. I think that is something I've trialed last time. It seemed to have a good impact because it's not somebody preaching at you, but we are having some sort of conversation and people are sharing experience. I think that sort of panel discussions seem to have a good engagement, I see.
Also, so Dan, do you want, I mean, I know you guys, you were on number 6, you set out quite fast, but there's still scary aspects to your business, being costs of the putting this all together, you know, because you do like luxury 5-star accommodation stuff. None of this is cheap, is it?
No, I mean, it's not just China Magic either. I've been involved in last year we put workshops on in Australia, New York, Vegas, London. So I've been involved in the marketing aspects of events all over the world. China Magic's the biggest one. And I mean, to Megla, to Mike, it's massive respect because it's hard getting people to China, especially out of the US. But what I found in all my experience, and it really is just to acknowledge everyone on this call, like events are good for everyone if they go well. They're often better for the speakers than they are the organizers because of the reach and what that does for the speaker. But ultimately, it's the organizer taking on the risk. And in my experience, it works in the rule of thirds. You get a third of people sign up at the start. You get a third of people in the sort of the interim period, which can feel like a long slog. And then you get a third of people sort of rush towards the last couple of weeks towards the event. And it's only in that last couple of weeks that your anxiety drops, the multiple zeros that you put down in deposits on trips like China Magic starts to feel like a good decision. And everything starts coming out. So the amount of work that goes into these events is humongous. And I think no matter where it is in the world, the same rules apply. And it's a piece of commitment. It's a lot of risk on the organizer. You've got to be confident in what you do. So everyone on this call, a massive respect from me in sort of pulling these together internationally, for sure.
Yeah, makes sense. Megla.
Yes, I think for Global Sources Summit, I totally agree with Dan. So about 60 to 70% of the tickets, they sell out in the beginning, but then about 30 to 40% we sell like in the last 2 weeks. So that's been the trend throughout the last 3 years. But now that I'm doing this trip, if we think that conferences are hard, then, oh my God, trips are like 10 times harder. So, and for me, like I'm the only person working on the trip, so I've got to, manage all of the different aspects. But, and for me, I've not only, have I organized the trip, but the challenge for me was educating people about sourcing from India, because that's another whole area that, people are not aware of at all. And so my job started actually 6 months ago. I actually went to India, I talked to suppliers and visited the trade show, and I wrote a book about how to source from India. And, that book has really helped me generate awareness. And then I created a Facebook group as well to engage with the community. And that has also helped me generate awareness about sourcing from India. So, as of today, I've sold out about 20 spots on the trip. So I'm really happy with that. I've got about 30 or 35 maximum. So, I think for me, the challenge has really been generating awareness about, sourcing from India in general.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. That's the thing. You open up new vehicles. There's different areas, and I think the diversity of the events that what we all do. Augustus has different types of tailored events. Emily's doing cross-border stuff, off-platform in terms of Amazon. Prabhat's mixing up there with vendor. Dan's doing the sourcing trips in China. You're doing them over in India. Mike is taking care of the crowd for the expats and stuff like that. So there's a lot of diversity there. But I think it all comes back to the essence is that you can't do these things unless you've got passion behind them. There's no point saying, let's do an event, let's go and make some money, because that's the worst way or the worst attitude that you can have if you kind of have an entitlement approach to things. You've got to treat every time you put on an event, that you've got to lift the gears each and every time. Like I think Prabhat mentioned is that some people don't come back. And so I think what's happening is that I would say in the UK of the level of events or in the EU at one point was quite poor. But I think with more and more people doing it now, everyone's stepping up their game. And I think that can only benefit the sellers. And there's two things that I believe that sellers want when they come to an event. They want to be able to network and they want content. They don't really care about the other bits in between, but they want the content and network. Sourcing trips slightly different, of course, because it's about sourcing the product. But overall, when people look at an event, there's two things they attend for. Would anyone question that or be agreeable with that? It's gone quiet out there.
Yeah, totally agree. I think content is, we do a survey after every Global Sources Summit, and then the presentations that really rank high on the survey are the ones that provided, a lot of actionable advice and strategies and specific things that people could implement in their businesses. So we find that generally, if people talk about, big picture stuff and, industry trends and all, attendees don't prefer those kinds of presentations. So yeah, I totally agree. Content is really important, and that's something that, we always focus on.
Cool.
I bounce off of that and say the content, but also the networking, Danny, that you said earlier. Like we survey our attendees after every event, and actually we found that the networking is definitely a great part of of the event that we hold, because people learn from our speakers and they learn from the workshops and the spotlight stage talks, but they also learn from each other. Like there'll be a question that they'll answer, and funny enough, someone from across the room will say, oh, I can answer that for you. And it builds such amazing relationships from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective as well. So yeah, definitely networking. I couldn't agree more.
Sounds good. Well, look, we could wrap here. Has anyone got any last final thoughts before we go?
I would like maybe to mention to everyone who is considering, everyone who is considering to come or not to come to live events, don't look at the maybe presentation titles or the speakers. I think probably 50% of the power of the event is just networking and meeting people in real life. And this is actually during other events, my next event was born. So just shortly before Prague, talking to other people in person, I created event in Amsterdam, which is happening in October. And then when I was in Seller Sessions Live in the after party, I just got an idea for Lithuanian event, which is happening very soon. So this is what I wanted to share, that the presentations and speakers is just probably 50%, and the rest is like meeting people in real life.
Sounds good. All right, so let's sign off from everyone. So Prabhat, how can people reach you?
So the best thing to reach me for the event is amafestuk.com, and you can see all the speakers, what they're talking about. And yes, so hopefully I'll see you in October.
Excellent. Michael.
Sure. We actually just made our own website for this, crossbordersummit.com, and the podcast is globalfromasia.com.
Excellent. And Megla?
So for Global Sources Summit, it's globalsources.com/summit. That's the website. And then for India Sourcing Trip, it's indiasourcingtrip.com.
Excellent. And Emily?
Yeah, so for Lynn Academy, you just go to linnacademy.com. That's LINN academy.com. Or you can also, if you'd like, email our events team at events@linworks.com.
Sounds good. Have I forgot anyone here? Who needs to sign off?
Maybe.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Augustus. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, basically, you can check my events, sellerfest.com, europeansellerconference.com, ppccongress.com. And if you want to find me, just Google Augustus Orange, click Amazon.
Sounds good. If you're on live, then all of the links will be in the comment section below. And then on the podcast, I will add these as show notes. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you again in the next few days. Take care.